So that concludes the outline presentation, and as long as we have time, I'd like to open up the floor for any questions that you might have. Thank you. This presentation does emphasize the role of the Ahmadiyya, because it's a role that is really, let's be truthful, ignored among Muslims, at large. And that's a role that I want to highlight, because the purpose of my dissertation was to understand the intellectual background out of which Farad came from. And it was not, I was less interested in looking at a personal biography, a personal history, and more interested in understanding the intellectual, the religious, the philosophical, and the ideological background behind the Nation of Islam, because I feel that it's been misinterpreted too often in history by scholars, whether they're historians, sociologists. Many got certain aspects of it, but no one really, to my understanding, seemed to really understand what it was that the Nation of Islam was about and what Farad was attempting to do. But then to go on to some of your more, I guess, maybe emotive concerns, I don't think that we're taking anything away from African American agency. There is a chapter in my dissertation, or at least a part of a chapter, I just can't remember, that looks just at the platform that the Ahmadiyya used. And if you read the entire thing, or forget reading whatever I wrote, that's not that important, but if you look at the entire history, you understand that the Ahmadiyya are only agents and actors themselves. They're attempting, and that's why I spent so much time trying to build up what they were doing before 1930. They're attempting desperately to find someone who is receptive to, what's the word I can use, to liberating Islam itself. Even though they're critiquing Christianity, this is in British India, that this group arises, and they don't feel that they can, they feel that Islam, that Muslim societies themselves have become corrupt. And of course, all Muslims are now at this time saying, what did we do wrong? Shaking their head, because, we're coming under the yoke of these infidels, so to speak, or at least that's their language. So you have some going into the camp of like, okay, we just have to go back to the hadith and the Quran, and we've just messed up. Others saying we just have to blindly imitate the Christians because they've made progress and they have science and rational thought on their side. And then you have this one lone little guy, Ghulam Ahmed, saying, well, no, Islam has what we need, and we don't need to imitate blindly, and we don't need to imitate without thought, even our predecessors. We need to, use our brains and think and look at what we have in the Quran. And it's not to say that I agree with everything that Ghulam Ahmed said, but the one thing that he was attempting to say was, look, our ulama has betrayed us. They are basically working hand in glove with the rulers and the social and political and economic leaders of Muslim societies. And so they've betrayed the trust of the ummah. So you've got this scholarly class who is no longer doing what it needs to do. Let's go and look at the West then. They are actually, by their behavior and what they're producing, they are actually more in line and more in sync with the message that Allah sent to the world revealed through Muhammad. And look at even their democratic society as an example. And they were not just theorizing about this. They're actually studying the history. They're studying the scriptures. These men were extremely learned in the languages that scriptures were revealed in, you understand? And they were religious scholars. They were scholars of scripture. They were historians. They were mathematicians. They were, and they were putting a lot into this. Now, when they get to America, they're attempting to do the same thing that they did in Europe. They only want to appeal to the people who have the power to actually engineer society. They're not concerned so much with the unlettered masses. And so that's why their target population was not even African Americans. So it's kind of like our agency is still there, you understand? What they do is when they begin to hit these brick walls because of racism, and then they also notice simultaneously that the few converts they are making are African Americans, they begin to study that culture, the culture of. So, I mean, they're aware of the contemporaries, they know Father Divine, they know what's going on, but they're also aware of, and quoting Blyden, like you mentioned, and Bishop Turner. It's Reconstruction, right after the Civil War. They are actually studying the Ahmadiyya. So they're looking at what we've done. They're studying our religious leaders and our social leaders who have gone into the Deep South or been born in the Deep South and who are basically coming in on that, you know, Booker T. Washington approach, or not even just Washington, that approach where you're saying, look, we need some kind of paramilitary outfit for our men, we need discipline, we need this. And so they're studying that. And it is only by studying what we have already done, as well as our experience, that they are even able to blend something that would appeal to us. So they have definitely built their platform. Actually, they're bringing what they have to a platform that we've already built. I look at the things that his movement is really critiqued for the most. To me, when you really look at him and study him and what he's saying, to me that seemed to be more a means, because you have the ulama saying, okay, that's it, you know, like, unless you come through one of our schools and, you know, study for 40 years, and then when you're ready to die, you know, we can stamp our seal of approval on you. Unless you do that, you're really not fit to think and interpret or make this religion relevant to you. And so he was actually saying, well, you know, I don't need to be stamped with Hanafi or Shafi'i or any of these, because I'm actually inspired on my own. God's speaking to me, you know? So that's kind of his way of circumventing the obstacles that are there at that time. Of course, with any movement, once the popular leader dies, you have these struggles for power and egos and conflicting agendas. And so one of his sons, who becomes the head of the Ahmadiyya movement proper, that is the larger movement and the more visible movement, and is referred to by outsiders as the Qadiani. That group, in order to retain its, they wrestle control of the movement away from his closest supporters, which would be the Lahore intelligentsia that I mentioned, Muhammad Ali, Sher Khan, these guys. And what they say is, what they do is he makes it, there's more of a personality cult type involved in it. So he's saying, you know, my father was the Messiah and I'm his son, you know? And so they emphasize, as I tried to say earlier, the particularistic aspects of Ahmad's thinking. But I don't think that was all to it, and I don't even think that was the most important part. To me, and again, this is going in and reading and looking at what's being said and written, the important part was that effort to reclaim Islam from the chokehold, if you will, of Sunni orthodoxy. And that was not about proliferating more Ahmadiyya. That was about liberating Islam. And I do see Imam Muhammad as kind of a logical culmination to those efforts and a fulfillment of it in a sense.